The show's been recorded on October 1st, 2017. By the time you hear it, things may have changed. Welcome to Black Women Talk Politics. I'm Sabria Williams.
I'm Sheila Clark.
And so, again, we have a week full of, according to Homeland Security Chief Elaine Duke, a week full of good news stories, if you listen to her, regarding Puerto Rico and the government's efforts there. And if you've been watching, or not even watching, if you just turn your TV on with the sound off, you can obviously see and know that this is not a feel-good story. Elaine Duke did have to retract that. She never retracted, because what we do know about this administration is they never apologize, but she did come back with a softer comment on how the administration will not rest until all Puerto Rican citizens are back in their homes, blah, 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 blah. So I think as you know, to give some backstory, if you have been under a rock, Puerto Rico was hit by Hurricane Maria. And not only hit, it was dead on. It was a storm that we had talked about. It was 10 days ago now. And we all knew this was coming. Everybody except apparently the president and his folks that need to help. But we all knew it was coming. We'd heard about it. We knew it was going to be Category 5 and they were going to get hit dead on. It was going to be, devastating. But even if you didn't know, we did know that we did this twice before in Texas and Florida this month, or last month, in September. And so this is a routine that we had it seemed like, okay, this is great. The third time will be where it could be a story of recovery and rescue and how everybody galvanized around Puerto Rico and we worked it out. Not so much. So the mayor of San Juan, Carmen Yulín Cruz, was literally begging on TV on Saturday, begging for help, begging for the people of Puerto Rico. We are dying. Her quote is, "We are dying. You are killing us with your inefficiency and bureaucracy." And apparently, the thin-skinned president could not take it. It was too much for him to take, because sitting at his Bedminster Golf Course in New Jersey, he could not muster up the compassion or empathy to feel for the Puerto Rican people. So he lashed out immediately at Cruz. And his response to her was, the mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by the Democrats that you must be nasty to Trump. That was his tweet. One of several tweets. I think he's tweeted 18 times in an 11-hour period with regard to Puerto Rico. I
guess he's paying attention now.
But a lot of it to not talk about how the government was going to help Puerto Rico,
right, but
to talk about Mayor Cruz and how basically another tweet was the mayor of San Juan. Was such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan, who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything to be done for them when it should be community effort. 10,000 federal workers now on island doing fantastic job. This is a dog whistle for racism. I mean, who is they? It is us. Nobody said one thing about they when it was Texas, one thing about they when it was Florida. I think this story this week has made me the most emotional, the most angry. I honestly, when Sheila and I started this back April, I never believed that we would be here where we have a president who is dividing America literally between brown line. There's a line, and if you're on it and you are not white, he is dividing us. We have heard no mention of even the U.S. Virgin Islands until now, where now he's going to go on Tuesday to Puerto Rico and possibly visit the U.S. Virgin Islands, who's also devastated. These are it says U.S. Virgin Islands. There's no mistaking who these people are. They are our people. They are United States citizens. The only thing that differs them from Texas and Florida is that they're majority brown. That's it. So if you cannot see that this is racist divisiveness, then I don't know what, I mean, I'm exhausted and I'm sad, and it makes me, want to scream every time this president speaks to his base and not the country. We are a country of people. And our people in Puerto Rico are dying. Our people in the Virgin Islands are in need, they're desperate need, and we're not getting it. And he has and his biggest issue is that he's been made to look bad, because all that matters to this man are the optics. So if it doesn't make him look good, or the fact that, Puerto Rico is poor, so, now they have to, how are we going to pay for it? It's was also in it. I mean, things that if you are a person of compassion, you immediately go into action. You immediately start to get the job done as the leader of the country. And then you worry about how it gets paid for later. You don't worry about that on the heels of this, where people are literally dying. And, he was tweeting earlier in the week about how only 18 deaths. Well, during the storm isn't generally what kills the people. What kills the people are not having clean water, no food, no infrastructure, not being able to have your medication, your diabetes medication, not having access to hospitals. That's what kills the people. That's what when people die. Katrina, yes, it was devastating and people died from Katrina initially, but what largely people died from was the neglect. And what I do have to say, they keep comparing this to Katrina. My issue with that is that Katrina was just incompetence. The administration just didn't know. They were trying. They were there. They just didn't know how to handle it. This is sheer neglect. This is willfully deciding that I'm going to neglect these people. I'm going to be in my country club where I have my clean water, where I am, hanging out, and just, have poor leadership.
And I think that, a lot of people don't
Sorry,
have
my
the
rant.
sense for, well, it's okay. I mean, I think it's a good rant, because I totally agree with you. Personally, because we know Trump isn't that intelligent, I believe that he didn't really realize that we had responsibility for Puerto Rico.
Right.
One of the things I said this week,
Right.
he probably just found out that it was a U.S. territory.
Right.
He probably was like chilling because he's like, oh, they got to do that. Oh,
Right.
that's ours.
But what we don't have is a vote. They
Well,
don't have
they
a vote.
don't have a vote.
And so that's what's important.
But not only doesn't Puerto Rico have a vote, the U.S. Virgin Islands
No.
doesn't have a vote.
So these people are expendable. They're brown and no vote. and no
American
voice.
Samoa doesn't have a vote, Guam or the North Mariana Islands.
Mm-hmm.
So what a lot of people, I know that I was not, I didn't know a lot about how many people lived in Puerto Rico, but now I do. I understand
3.5 million.
That's basically half the size of New York.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, when you're talking about, and I'm talking about New York City, basically half of New York City
It's 4 DCs.
without access to electricity, without access to water for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can get it then, because everybody would be clearly understanding that it would be impossible to live for a year in those conditions. Yet that's how many people we're talking about in Puerto Rico, and these are U.S. citizens. So, and when you talk about neglect, you talk about, it would be as if this was the first time we've ever been able to get to an island before. But there's,
Well, it's in an ocean with big water,
right,
according to
exactly. And so, again, I say,
But even if that is, and you're also acting like it's in the middle of the friggin' Atlantic Ocean. It's not. Puerto Rico is a hop from Florida. It's not far. It's not hard to get to. It's not hard to manage. You're making excuses for your mismanagement. That's it. That's all.
basically, and because they talk a lot about how the U.S. was a force with the Haitian earthquake, and
Immediate response.
so as well as hundreds.
And that's something that you couldn't predict, an earthquake. But we got hands on the ground, immediate attention to Haiti, as we should have, as it should have been done. But for something that we knew was coming, for something that we saw, for something that we had practiced for with 2 storms before in the United States, here, we could not make it happen. And then when we couldn't make it happen, what we do know is that if you are a narcissistic misogynist, who is our president, you don't apologize, right? Narcissists can't apologize. So instead of saying, you know what, this is something that we should have. I apologize. I'm sorry for you, Mayor Cruz. I'm sorry that you're going through this. You blast her, and then you pick out the people that are on your side. So he spoke to the governor of Puerto Rico, who has a different view.
But actually, the governor too, as well, came out and admitted that the response from Trump was, or from this administration, was inadequate. Mm-hmm. I mean, he wasn't potentially as coarse maybe with his criticism, but he said, and all you have to do is look at some of the news reports that are coming out of Puerto Rico. The New York Times does a great piece today where they take it hour by hour and what it's like to be in Puerto Rico in terms of.
And if you have to stand in line for 6 hours for water, 6 hours for gas, then in order to get your generator, and then 6 hours for food,
then the whole most of the country has no electricity.
95% of the country is still without electricity.
Being outside after dark not only it's very dangerous, as well as just, who can see where they're even going. So it's just a major problem. Many, many, many people have a day's worth of food. And, when you're talking about the deliveries of goods to the people, it's not happening. No. There's an absence of trucks.
Or not outside of San Juan. Like, you have the big city, right? So San Juan, and people are looking at San Juan, and when you show, a lot of the reporters are in San Juan, and you do see sort of like cars moving, and so it could be. But
in the mountainside.
There are places that are so remote that people have to make their own makeshift bridges across rivers to get. This is what's happening. And so even I commend Mayor Cruz even more, because she is the mayor of San Juan, and she's not just speaking for herself. She says, I'm speaking for the mayors of these remote countries, these remote towns where people don't hear about, people can't see, can't even get to. That's who I'm trying to be the voice for, because those are the people that are dying. Those are the people that can't get to doctors or their insulin or anything that they need, the basic necessities, that are drinking from these creeks that are polluted.
Washing their hair, washing their body.
In this polluted water. That's who she's speaking for. Because, we know she's okay. And that's why Trump tried to keep telling, why don't you just pay attention to San Juan? Because she's not a selfish asshole like you are. That's why she's not paying attention to just her piece of the puzzle. She's global in her speak about Puerto Rico.
Right.
I don't know. I just.
Absolutely. And, for there to be some declaration that she is less than adequate as a leader just falls right into the conversation that we always hear when it comes to a woman in leadership.
By this administration.
Nasty woman, nasty remarks. When it comes to women of color, when it comes to people of color. Again, to me, seeing a response from this administration for Florida and Texas, red states.
Yeah. And that's what he said. He made that clear. You all voted for me. When he was in Texas, he said this. This is a quote from you all voted for me. It's deplorable. He is a deplorable. There's nothing worse I can think of right now than this man and this administration.
Well, it's also, I think, besides him, though, it's the co-signers.
Oh God, of
that
course.
are in his administration that need to speak out, and not just speak out, but at this point, we need to be focused on doing.
Yeah.
And so
but
getting the goods.
The Republicans
it wasn't until Thursday that the Jones Act was and that was really important in terms of allowing other countries to assist goods to come
into port. That's huge. Why does it take 7 days after the catastrophe? That should be immediate.
Which that happened for Texas and happened for
of course it did.
Florida almost immediately. So again, it's just a lack of attention, to the islands, a lack of attention to Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands, probably a lack of knowledge about the responsibility that we have as the United States.
I'm not going to even give them that with that. I think we're giving them all. It's a racist neglect. That's what it is. It's not because you've done this 2 days ago. We've been in this mix, and we were, and sort of patting him on the back for the efforts he did in Texas and Florida. Okay, all right, you're on it, whatever. And so then you drop the ball. So
I think it was intentionally, right?
Intentionally, exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is malicious. This is murder. I don't know.
And people have said words like genocide, that this is planned, that we're basically, again, we have to keep saying Black Lives Matter,
Brown
that
lives.
Our lives are disposable. And so we'll take our time and more of this narrative about people, who
lazy,
of color, lazy, don't want to help
themselves.
So it for his base, it plays right into what they think.
The divide. But let you know the people of Woodstock, Alabama, who are just as poor as the people in Puerto Rico. He's not checking for you either. Be clear on that base. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's really one of those things where, again, we have to keep blasting a bright light on and say, no, this isn't okay. It shouldn't take this amount of time.
No, it shouldn't. But I mean,
we also have to go and say to ourselves, well, what are we going to do as a community as well to assist? I know I have family on the U.S. Virgin Islands. So, even for myself saying, okay, what's my role here? What can I do? Because obviously, the government, it's not going to be as sensitized to the issues of these non-voting territories in the Caribbean, which, from the president's perspective, are pretty disposable.
Yep, quite disposable.
I think there was another thing that folks talked about, too, which is to expect this exodus of people from the Caribbean to the States. And that,
which is great because then they'll all vote.
Well,
they will all immediately when they get here, you're able to vote. So come. I mean, I hate that if you must leave, then come, and you need to exercise your vote, and you need to remember this. Remember it. Don't let this be where your short memory comes in. Remember this.
And so they talked about Florida. They talked about Central Florida and how this is really going to create potentially some changes in terms of the grid
and the demographic, absolutely.
Because this is going to be where a lot of folks settle, and also New York, of course. So I think, hey, if we got 3.5 more million votes towards our nominee, whoever that may be,
at the total destruction of Puerto Rico. We come that if 5 million people are here, that means there is a total destruction of a U.S. territory, of a beautiful place, of culture, of these people's lives.
It's going to take Puerto Rico years and years and years to. I mean, the pictures are just
like
devastating.
Just like it took New Orleans, but guess what? New Orleans is now back, and it's not. I feel like
it's like 10 years ago.
But it takes time. But we can do it. We have a model for how it can get done. We have a model for how somebody dropped the ball initially on a catastrophe disaster like this, but they were able to turn it around, and now we have still a thriving New Orleans, and we can do that with Puerto Rico and make it even better. I mean, yes, it wasn't. Puerto Rico was having some issues, but now it's a chance to let's make it a bigger and better Puerto Rico. That should be the messaging. You know what? We did this. Now we can make the grid better. We can make infrastructure better. This is our opportunity.
Yeah, that's true.
I
mean,
is
definitely opportunity.
Use it for that. Spin it. Come on. I am Sabria Williams, and I'm thinking this. Why are you as I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think that, and then the biggest industry in Puerto Rico is tourism, which obviously no one's visiting Puerto Rico right now from a tourist perspective. So then there's, even more question about how revenues will be generated. All this conversation about Puerto Rico's former debt and this conversation about how Puerto Rico is going to pay back the federal government, which is foolishness. So
it's ridiculous.
It's going to be interesting to watch. I think we'll be galvanizing our listeners as well as ourselves, our friends and family, to try to see how we can reach out to help, in particular, Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah. But they've gotten a lot of private support. And so, hats off to all of the people. And I think Pitbull, there was one of the top chefs who was there, and literally he was making sandwiches. And so there are private support is coming in, and now government support, and hopefully that'll all continue. And Puerto Rico will be a better Puerto Rico. And people stay and be able to live happy lives, after this catastrophe. That's the hope, right?
It's interesting how many stars too have joined to tweet this. Like Kim Kardashian, Lady Gaga, Rihanna.
Because it's ridiculous.
Even the guy from Hamilton.
Lin-Manuel. Yeah,
absolutely. Trump was going straight to
hell.
I'm like,
as he should, right?
Oh, we knew that,
In a very,
Well, that's one of the big stories. I mean, of course, when we were talking about the podcast last week, we were getting ready to see what was going to happen in football.
Right.
Because as you recall, last week, our big conversation was about Trump basically saying that folks should boycott.
Being racist, again, the common theme, common thread.
Boycott the NFL, but not for the reasons that we would say. Boycott the NFL because players like Colin Kaepernick and others were taking the knee during the national anthem, which is their, First Amendment right? But so there was a call from Trump to boycott the NFL because the game wasn't what it used to be anyway, or that the coaches should fire the players. So, of course, we knew that this was not going to be met without some element of speaking
Backlash.
back talk
Yeah.
from the players and of course the coaches, because we knew that the coaches were not going to be subservient to Trump in any way. And so here come the coaches and the players. And so importantly, over 204 players elected to either kneel or sit during the national anthem last week. And so these are players from teams such as the Oakland Raiders, Buffalo Bills, Denver Broncos, New York Giants, Detroit Lions, New England Patriots, New Orleans Saints, and Atlanta Falcons. The Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Minnesota Vikings, Philadelphia Eagles, Chicago Bears, and others stood with their arms locked. And some players from those teams chose to kneel. So you had a variety of teams who chose to kneel. You had other teams who chose to stand with their arms locked with the owners. And then you
And
had
Trump liked the arms locked because that was he was cool with that. 'Cause
Right.
He's an
you know, and that, you know, it was interesting too, kind of. Well, I guess, so a couple things. One, I expected there to be some reaction from the players. I definitely expected the owners to side with the players because it was in their best interest from the business perspective. There were some folks that try to, I guess, kind of meet in the middle with this. We kneel for one part of the national anthem, and then we lock
or right
arms.
before it, because that's what the Cowboys did. They kneeled right before the anthem, but apparently the Cowboys owner said that if any of his players actually knelt during the anthem, they would be fired. So that was, so that's, you have the backstories to the,
that's
because it's
interesting.
about optics, right?
Well, it was a lot about optics, and I felt that the owners' piece was very much about optics. I felt
Absolutely.
that the players, you just knew that there was going to be some solidarity between the players, particularly around, you're not going to tell us what to do in terms of, if we want to protest police brutality or what have you, we're not going to be told what to do. But the owners, I believe they are still trying to show this kind of, we're going to do what we want to do. You can't boss us around. But, they are still very concerned about the fans, who the fans have basically been giving mixed reviews, or some of the polling data has said the fans don't want to see politics in football, which is very interesting. I think
because you know what it is, like I was saying last week, sports in general in this country, it's a place where people can relax. They want to be brought together. So it doesn't matter what color jersey I have on or what color I am. We are together in this, this game that is a relief from the realities of politics and life and work. So on Sunday, before I have to go to work on Monday, I'm popping my beer and I'm chilling and I'm watching the game. And now you, President Trump, have inserted yourself and made it more divisive, because there was spotlight on Kaepernick and the other players who were taking a knee because of police brutality. There was, but it wasn't in this way. And so maybe, and he, instead of making it, and even because he hasn't even said why Colin Kaepernick or the players were taking a knee, right? He wasn't saying that, hey, this is being done because of, he didn't mention it. He was just talking about how those SOBs are taking a knee, against our flag, against our country, against our military, which is totally not the case.
Right. It's like every time someone uses the flag as a way to protest, it's spun in a way that they're anti-military, anti-American, whereas, again, they're just using it to make a point. I don't have any problem with politics being a part of sports. I mean, there's this dichotomy that people want to, you have this make-believe life over here.
Right? You don't have a make-believe life.
You have make-believe life over here, and over here you have the crap that comes with being a black man in society. I don't buy that.
The Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali. You have the Olympics. In every different type of sport, there have been political statements. So
and they were met with discourse from the government. People didn't like it when you have the Olympians with the fist raised. They were blackballed. But it wasn't so taking a knee. They didn't believe that people were going to surround them and give them hugs. They knew that they were going to be met with backlash. That was the point, to bring awareness to an issue. But because we have a divisive president who is all about optics and not liking the way it looks and not liking the way it feels. They're SOBs, but apparently the optics of Nazis running through Charlottesville is okay, or the optics of a Tamir Rice being gunned down at 12 in Cleveland at a park for playing like 12-year-olds do. Those optics are okay because, again, it's about race and pitting us against each other. Being in Alabama with your quote unquote base and fueling these, I guess, this racial tension that you want to bubble over because you know that's the only way you stay relevant. Because
stay relevant with the people that, voted for you or that did the behind the scenes rallying. And I think they talk about eventually folks are going to have to choose sides. You don't get to vote for Trump but not be aligned with the racist and divisive messages that he puts forward. And people keep wanting to have that privilege. They want the privilege of, well, I'm with him on tax cuts, but this other stuff that he's about, that's not me. Well, it's all in who you select to represent you. You're with it or you're not with it. So this president does continue to use race as a bait to encourage people who want to pick sides and put one race over the other.
Right. Or no, one race over all others is what I mean.
That's
it's
true.
one race all over everybody else.
So,
he's made it very clear.
So the NFL, I think we'll continue to see. I think at this point, my prediction is we're going to continue to see protests from players all season long. I think it'll, obviously it's not going to be the same as it was last week.
Right.
But, now the cat's out the bag. It's not just Colin. There's other people that feel that they need to say something, that they're going to stand with him. I'm curious what the owners are going to do. I think you are going to see a lot more of this locking arms thing. And I was watching one of the sports shows or something, and the guy was talking about that a lot of times when they were asking the fans to lock arms, the fans were very a bit put off by that because they didn't understand what they were locking arms for. And so that goes back to making sure that if you're protesting something, that people understand what you're protesting for and what you're not protesting for. So when people are thinking that we're locking arms in support of you can regard the flag how you want, of course not everyone's going to buy into that. Right? And that's people's personal choice. But when you're talking about locking arms for the rights of players to express their opinion or locking arms against police brutality, I mean, it would have been good if they were going to try to engage the broader audience in some type of political statement for people to have a sense of what they were making a statement about. Because I think that also created some confusion for the fans, and the fans didn't really buy into it. I think the players were more clear exactly what they were protesting about, and so were the owners. But I think when they tried to engage the fans, I think a step was missed, and people didn't quite understand, which is why they didn't like it.
Right. But even though the fans don't like it, so you're at these games and people are booing, right? You boo because you see your players taking a knee. Immediately when the ball is snapped, everybody is engaged and cheering. So it's this. I mean, I'm going to boo for that, but I'm not leaving. I'm not going to not watch the game.
Nobody's leaving. You bought season tickets? Are you serious? There's no way. There's no way. That was. Listen, the tickets just to a regular game cost a lot of money, let alone season tickets. Those folks will be there.
They're watching their teams.
Yeah, they'll probably just put their earphones in or whatever.
What we want is for the real message, which is getting lost, is that we have a problem.
Exactly. That's what I go back to what I said last week. For those owners, if they really cared, they'd put some money up. And the players, too. And some of the players have put some money up. But at the end of the day, we need money to go towards organizations and campaigns that help to educate police, help to create conflict resolution and mediation in the community, that work with young people who have been negatively impacted by gun violence, that work against racial bias and implicit bias that exists in our community that people don't talk about, but it exists every day. So those are what we need to really be working on.
Good luck with this president.
Well, he's not going to do it.
That's what I mean. So
we're just looking past him, we just have to look past him.
It's so hard.
But what we know he will support, though, is his administration taking charter flights.
Yeah.
At our expense.
At our expense.
I mean, this billionaire
draining the swamp.
The billionaire lifestyle of a federal employee
Yeah.
has now been pointed out by the Trump administration.
But a lot of them are rich. I mean,
and that's the thing that kills me. I'm like, well, you already have a plane.
Right.
I know you do.
Right.
I know you have a plane. Use your own damn plane.
Well, Betsy DeVos has been using her own plane.
I saw she made a point of saying that I use my own plane. Well, okay. Well, good for her.
God.
Good for her.
I want to throw up.
No, I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. But all of these people, men, are multimillionaires, okay?
Yep.
And we're talking about not just Tom Price, who basically got, dragged out on the carpet and potentially, but we don't really know, was the most excessive of the bunch.
Yeah, he's about $1 million, I think.
He's $1 million, but he offered to pay back a cool 51,
for his seat.
5%.
Right.
5% of $1 million.
Yeah,
really, that doesn't
seat.
work for me.
For his seat,
Right.
because that's what happened. Because if his seat but if you hadn't gotten your seat, the plane would never have gotten off the air. I mean, so it's ridiculous how they're trying to play us and make us like we are stupid.
But it's right. So Tom Price, well, I'm glad he's going anyway because he was a poor representative for the Department of Health and Human Services.
Well, and let's be clear, that's why he's gone, because this healthcare bill did not get. I mean, Trump said it in July 24th, in a rally. He was like, "Well, if you don't get this health, you're I'll fire you." It was jokingly, but here we are. No healthcare. Now you're making again optics, because I don't really believe that Trump gives a damn that these people are flying. You got caught. Now it's making us look bad. Now something has to happen.
He doesn't really care
because he's doing it.
Because not only is Tom Price doing it, Ryan Zink, who is the Interior Secretary, was flying, on so-called business trips, but with a lot of personal pit stops, including to his home in Montana.
Of course.
Scott Pruitt from EPA was also taking at least four non-commercial and military flights since mid-February, costing the taxpayers more than $58,000. And Steve Mnuchin, who is our Treasury Secretary, also has been taking charter flights. And so, what he said, interestingly enough, was, well, all this was approved by the White House. So if that is true, I mean, because there was an analysis that you could take a $25,000 chartered flight from Dulles to Philadelphia, or you could get your butt on Amtrak for
and
$72.
You spent 45 minutes to get to Dulles.
Even if you took a Acela, for $200, you would be there in
Quicker.
2 hours.
Yeah.
And you could have your driver pick you up at 30th Street. But so no, instead I'm going to spend $25,000, 25,000 times more, plus some, right? Because that would only be 1,000 times 25, right? But 25 times more, right? Yeah. And to get to the same place, because I guess you're too good for Amtrak, but this is draining the swamp.
It's ridiculous.
To me, it sounds like the same old stuff plus worse.
It's horrible. I mean, and then the same Tom Price condemning Nancy Pelosi on all of her, private travel in 2007. I mean, we got it down from 8 planes to 4 planes. I mean, it's so much hypocrisy. It's so much just, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do and nobody can stop me. I mean, our government has run amok.
But the thing that's so weird to me about this whole thing is if you've ever received federal grants, they've clamped down on travel tremendously. You can't even go anywhere for more than $58 a day. So I don't know. I'm like, isn't this the same federal budget?
Right. They're saying that we all have to comply with.
I'm telling you, we can't even go on trips to get training. No. To get an education about how to do our jobs better. But apparently you can get a chartered flight.
Well, that's why you can't. So they can do that. That's why we can't. I mean, when I was a federal government contractor and I was under the constraints of the federal government guidelines on my travel, I had to get the per diems. I could not stay at a hotel that was over a certain amount. My flight could not cost a certain amount. And I mean, if that meant I had to take Southwest, stop 4 times before I got to Atlanta, so be it. Because apparently now we find that we're under these constraints so that our leaders, fearless leaders, don't have to be.
Well, I just want them to get their own billionaire planes that they already have
and use them. If
you want to fly on your luxury liner, don't charge it to us. And if this is the standard practice, which I think a lot of people would say, well, this is how it's always been. Well, this should
I don't
be,
think it's always been this way.
This
No.
should not be. I mean, now when we're having conversations about deficits and we don't want to increase the minimum wage and we don't want to send aid to this place unless we know how they're going to repay it, I think one of the first things that we can do is take out all of these extra unnecessary charter planes. For if you're the president, fine, I get it. But for real, you are like the Secretary of the Interior. Like no one is checking for you.
Ever.
For real.
Ever.
You can get on first class on Delta and you will be just fine.
And you're not even, and I don't even think you're allowed to do. You're supposed to only do business.
If
you're
any
supposed to
of
be in
these
business
people
class.
would walk past me down the street,
Right, nobody would care.
I would not
They'd have
know
to
who they
introduce
would.
themselves, right.
The only thing I would know would probably be because they had security walking next to
Right,
them.
right.
Okay, come on.
Or because now we see them because
Well,
all
now
this
we know who they are. We're like,
high-profile
oh,
things,
did you just get off the charter flight?
Right.
Or were you on coach with me?
never coach. So yeah, that's where we are. And then speaking of more money to billionaires or misappropriated money to billionaires, we have the tax bill.
So we really need to watch this because, apparently this is going to be passed through
Yeah.
reconciliation also.
Also, supposedly, yeah. But I will say that Donald Trump is a liar again. I'm going to call that out because he's saying that he's not going to benefit from this at all, and that the middle class it's going to, bring in. And I have no tax background, but from what I've been reading, it seems pretty simple that the 1% is going to gain a lot. In a study by the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, they were saying that 1% would see gains. The top 1% would see 80% of the benefits of this tax bill. So the top 1% of the United States, the top one, which your president is in, he and his group, the Prices,
the charter
Pruitts,
jet.
the charter jet crew, that's who's going to see the benefits.
So after they take
households
our government
making-
charter jet, then they'll get
then
a
they'll
tax
get the tax
rate.
cut for it. Yeah. So that if you're making $900,000 more a year in tax, it would drop your taxes by about $200,000. So that is what the study is saying. But for us, we would our tax forms are going to be easier. So the middle class will have that to look forward to.
I guess because we're not, right. I heard now we're going to have a post. I mean, like,
yeah, it's going to be a post.
I think
so
most
that's
of
our
us-
benefit from this tax bill.
Right, less
Those small-
paper. We're
the
going to
less
save
paper.
money from paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are less tax brackets, which benefit the 1% or higher people who are making higher income, because the tax bracket now is 3.9% of your taxes if you're in the highest tax bracket. But in order to be in that highest tax bracket, you have to make $418,000 a year as a single or $470,000 as a couple. Now, I mean, I know people who, but I'm not, that's not my tax bracket. So it's going to take it from 39.6% to 35%. So that's who benefits. And that's not middle class. Middle class is between 50 and
I think 200
and
or something like
200 or maybe even if you go to 3, but that's not middle class. $418,000, you are rich if you're making that annually by yourself, in my opinion. And if you aren't, you need, some more money management skills. The estate tax is going to be eliminated, and Trump calls that the death tax, because essentially it's if you pass money down after you die away, if you pass money, homes or other assets to your heirs, they would pay a 40% tax. But here's the part that's left out with that: the only people who have to pay this tax are people passing on more than $5.9 million if you're married, and if you're not married, and a couple that inherits $11 million without paying taxes. So you have to be so if it's asinine to think that these are the numbers that where you're going to have to pay. So if I'm not passing that amount on, then I don't have to pay for that. I don't know.
And the person that's passing $11 million to
Right.
their descendants,
Right? Should they?
is It's probably in the top tax bracket, right?
Right.
And should contribute.
Trump frequently claims that the estate tax hurts farmers and small business owners, but according to the Washington Post fact checkers, only 5,500 estates will pay estate tax at all in 2017, out of 3 million estates. Okay. And of those 5,500 hit with the tax, only 80% are farmers or small businesses. So again, another ruse, another way to make this seem like these people are benefiting when really it's not. It's he and his cronies. And I mean, I don't know what I think it's another lie that we have to be made aware of. And since it's not as, I think, in your face as a healthcare bill, we need to watch it carefully, because if it passes, we don't benefit. In fact, there are some studies and some folks that are saying that the poor will actually have, about a 2% more in taxes. I mean, so these are things that we have to be aware of and listen to and write your representative about.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those things where we really have to be very vigilant, because they are looking for a win right now.
Yeah,
the
they need it.
Republicans, the Senate, they've been pretty much battered with this whole healthcare thing. Remember, the House passed theirs, the Senate didn't pass theirs. The Senate is trying to do this with reconciliation. There's a lot of support around the GOP base for tax reform. Tax reform hasn't happened in 30 years.
Nope.
So it's been a long time coming. It's not even a new, fresh thing that folks are looking at, saying, I mean, a lot of people would probably say the tax code could use some improvement. It's outdated,
Absolutely.
right? And so we have to really pay attention to what's happening, because the Senate is moving pretty quickly. Remember, reconciliation has to happen,
Yeah.
Within a certain period of time. And so I think this is going to be one of those things where if we're, and also taxes can appear complicated,
Yes.
and you're not really exactly sure.
Right. I'm not.
What's gonna,
You know what I mean?
so, and then the way that they're selling it is that this is a jobs bill. So again, for folks who are unemployed or underemployed,
yeah.
it's being marketed in such a way that you're like, well, I want a job, so I'll support this.
And it's funny, I was watching CNN, and they were asking one of the reps, and I can't think of, but like, how is this going to benefit? How is it jobs going to come in? Because apparently a lot of these, companies are cash heavy now, and they're still not bringing in jobs. So what is the incentive for them to bring in jobs?
Right.
And there is none, and nobody can really answer the question. Like, there is no real incentive with this tax bill for people to bring in jobs, because they're not doing it now, and they can. You
Right,
can't.
because they basically try to make this case that, well, if they pay less taxes,
Right.
then they will invest more in expanding their businesses. But that's not necessarily true.
No.
They may just give bigger bonuses to
Right.
their
And because
shareholders,
and workers outside of the country don't require as much. Like, if my workers are in Vietnam and I can pay them $2 an hour, but I have to come here and pay the minimum wage, where am I going to go? I mean, if I'm doing it if I'm only on numbers and not ethical, which, I don't know. So,
yeah, and I think, again, we go back to this conflict of interest all the time. I mean, when you are a billionaire business owner, which I know a lot of presidents have been very, very wealthy.
Absolutely.
So being wealthy and being the president isn't a new thing. But we know that he, in particular, does not like the estate tax. He knows the estate tax is just not something that he's looking.
No.
He has
he has interest in this.
He's going to be passing on quite a bit of inventory
to his children, right?
And so, it's interestingly enough directly in a large way beneficial to himself.
1,000,000%. Anything he does, if it has his interest in it, he's not done anything that is selfless. That is not who this guy is.
So we're going to watch this tax reform thing and have hopefully some more detailed information. The CBO score is supposed to come out. I think another thing to watch out for is that the Republicans are ready to dismiss the CBO score because the CBO score has not been favorable to them on their other things. So they're going to be putting out all this, hashtag fake news, about
news is news. I'm so sick of.
They're just going to make up some, like the guy said today, Steve Mutual. He said, "I'm happy to bring you some economists." He said this on Meet the Press.
Right.
That will present this tax plan in the way that lines up with our math. Right. So we'll hire our hired help that are partisan.
We'll fake the math.
Right. So, we have to continue to look for independent sources of analysis and push that up against what we're being told by the White House.
Yeah, this one makes me a little bit nervous. Like I said, healthcare is easier to wrap your head around. People, you have an immediate like see, okay, Medicare gone. I can't do this. It's my help, but with taxes, it's a little longer, and the way they're massaging it. So I feel like we do have to sort of try and educate her. I know I have to educate myself because I have no, this is not my area of strength, but we definitely need to ask our listeners, and you pass it on to your family, that you need to be educated about this tax bill because it could be just as damning as anything else that this administration puts forth. But speaking of, we did have a victory this week, right? So
yes, we did.
No
yes,
on
we did.
no on healthcare. So
and I believe
Graham
the reconciliation period is over.
It's
now,
over. It's
so
done.
the healthcare,
they're holding on to something. Donald Trump said something about it's not dead, but he doesn't know. So the Graham Cassidy bill to repeal Obamacare, or the ACA. Republican leaders announced on Tuesday that, or Mitch McConnell, majority leader, announced the decision that they would have to concede. And we're super excited about that. He said, we haven't given up on changing the American healthcare system. We're not going to be able to do it this week, McConnell reported on Tuesday, but it still lies ahead of us, and we haven't given up on that. Well, good. When you go back, make sure that you are representing folks with pre-existing conditions, Medicaid, and women, and then, maybe we can talk, and not raising people's premiums. It can be done. Take a model from our neighbors in Canada or many other places around the world that have top-notch healthcare systems that don't bleed their citizens dry. That is my message. So the president, of course, wasn't happy. And again, I'm thinking this is largely why Price was fired, more so than him being on a private jet, because he could care less about that. But the fact that this wasn't done, and this was, part of it was the lock her up wall, Obamacare, first month, all of that gone, and it hasn't been able to get done. And I will commend, the senators who opposed this, Senator John McCain and Susan Collins and Rand Paul, who were outspoken, and, and the spineless ones that knew this was wrong and didn't say anything, shame on you. But when you see it, when you have people saying, I can't, not even for my party, I can't give you this one because it's so detrimental. That's what the message is by John McCain to me. That's what the message is from Susan Collins and Rand Paul, that But
I think Rand Paul, though, he was, unlike Susan Collins, who's a moderate, Rand Paul is far right-leaning person. So interestingly enough, one of the biggest challenges that the Republicans had was they couldn't reconcile the differences within their own party about how healthcare should be done. Susan Collins and her team wanted a more compassionate type of healthcare, i.e., we were going to keep Medicaid, where you have someone like Rand Paul who wants less government. So healthcare, and it's like Barack said a long time ago. He said, if the Republicans can come up with something that is better, that makes sure people have health insurance that's cheaper, that covers more people, I will support it. He said, but I will be surprised because it's very, very complicated. And I think what we've seen over these this first, what is this, 8 months into I don't even know how many months.
9. I think
feels like we've been there forever. And when will this nightmare be over? But that it's very complicated. And so I'm very thankful. I think, all of us should really pat ourselves on the back because we've been working hard to protect the health, the ACA. It's not perfect. No. I hope that what comes forth now is some type of bipartisan that has support on both sides. So, yay!
Right, we did it. Clap, a slow clap for that. Small victories with this administration.
Let's get a slow clap. Oh my goodness. Well, so just to bring us up to speed on North Korea, the only thing that has really changed is that Trump is still saying one thing and
his folks are saying another.
Basically, right. So now I guess Rex Tillerson gets the poke. He gets I think it just what was Jeff Sessions? Well, it was Tom Price's, Jeff Sessions. Then it was everybody really. It's just everybody.
But I feel like Tillerson yesterday was sort of like trying to calm.
He was. He
trying
said
to temper
that.
it. Hey, we're going to work together. We're here. We're
still talking to each other. Well, he said we're trying to talk. He says we have
Pyongyang and Yang.
We have several different channels for communication. He did say that, we're still kind of waiting, but we have some open channels. We're exploring it.
Because that's what you do. I mean, you want, Secretary of State, you want tempers to be mild. You want people not feeling like, oh my God, they can bomb us at any point in time. That's what leadership does. You want your people calm and happy and feeling good about life. And then you have Donald Trump, who stomps it down like a roach. In today's tweet, why don't you have that tweet?
Yeah, his tweet, he said, Tillerson is wasting his time trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man. That was part of it. And then later on in his tweet, he talked about, don't worry, Rex. We'll take care of it another way.
Yeah, save your energy. We'll get the job done.
Right. So Rex Tillerson is communicating, and I was kind of pleased or at least relieved that he was saying that, hey, it's not a total blackout. We are still talking. This is, but of course, and this is what I think you see a lot with Trump and his administration. So now that we get it as the strategy, it's like, okay, Rex is the one or whoever the person may be, right? That's actually working on the issues. And then Trump is the radio personality, television personality, ratings, biggest crowd ever. Right. And so he's going to, this bravado, being that megalomaniac that we talked about, name calling, jockeying, rallying up his base, this whole notion of he's a fighter. That's that's kind of his public image, that he likes that image. So, of course, in some ways, he's going to do this. The concern for me, which I keep saying, is that I believe that Kim Jong-un is the same way in terms of being. And so he said that
they're two crazies.
But Kim Jong-un said that if some type of military action was to happen, he would call that a declaration of war. So if we're talking about going to war with North Korea, oh my gosh. First of all, it's
so you would want somebody to come in as a Rex Tillerson. You would need that, right? So if that's the case, and Rex Tillerson is saying, hey, no, we're going to talk about it. That's what any other administration would be looking for. That's what you'd want. You want the conversation. You don't want these two crazies to get all pumped up and see whose chest is bigger. You want this to be brought down. And so Trump just, again, I think the bravado is for his base, for those people who are like, let's go to where who they have no idea what that means. You're not going to be in the streets with their gun. They're going to bomb you and you're not going to see it coming. That's how war happens now. It doesn't happen where you're going overseas it's a button.
Especially this guy. This guy, the whole thing he's been doing is testing nuclear weapons. So it's not like going to be like, and not that I was alive during Vietnam or these other wars,
even Iraq.
But when folks, it's over there somewhere.
Here.
That's the whole thing, that this is all about him detonating a missile. Whether it hits here or not, it's going to hit somewhere.
Exactly.
And people are going to die. And so, and all of this because somebody just can't shut up.
Yeah.
I just think so.
It's an ego. It's ego, and this is where we are.
The idea of economic sanctions, as has been said many, many times, is the only thing that makes sense. Our country going to war with North Korea
makes no sense.
No sense. And I think the pressures of all of the nations that have invested. This is not even
not just us, right?
This is the whole world's concern. So why would we deploy our soldiers? It's the whole world's concern.
We look so bad. I just feel like this is not our United States. This is not how it is, but then it is.
Well, we'll follow North Korea, but that was the update, for this week. So,
and I was commending Rex Tillerson I was like, okay, that sounds great. And then this tweet comes, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think Rex Tillerson is kind of an interesting person because he
what he doesn't want is Trump unhinged. I mean, he's been sort of the calming voice to his rants when it comes to, I don't know.
I just, but I hope Rex Tillerson will rethink the Boy Scouts invitation next year since he's so linked up with the Boy Scouts. Right. Just look, man. They made a statue of Rex Tillerson or something. I'm like, don't invite your boy next year, okay? Because he's not worth the trouble that it brings. So, last week, my act up was to attend the March for Black Women, which was held in Washington, D.C., actually yesterday.
How was it?
It was really good. It was also coupled. It was right before. So the March for Black Women was actually from 8 to about 11:30. Okay. And then it was kind of the lead-in for the March for Racial Justice,
Okay.
which was a much broader march,
Right.
not exclusive in its focus
Right.
for Black women per se, but it's still very much in line.
Absolutely.
So we've got a few clips of some of the really dynamic speakers that were there. We're going to play one or two now, and then we can just talk a little bit about what folks were talking about.
Seen in the few years that I have had, the ways in which Black women have been admired for our figures, but ignored for our leadership. I have seen Black women be sacrificed for the dreams and aspirations of Black men. And I have seen Black women been dismissed for being able to dedicate and contribute, but told they can have a seat at the table if we take the notes. Basically, we know that Black women are too often undervalued and overlooked. My hope is that on this day, that we send a message to all of the groups and all of the industries that truly rely and take from us to trust Black women, to support Black women, because they are failing us.
Look within yourself and to your neighbor and say, we have the solution. It is not written in academia. It is not written in the halls of any college or university. It is written in our hearts. In our hearts and in our minds. From the streets of Charlottesville to Charlotte. From Chicago to Ferguson. From Ferguson to Palestine. From Palestine to Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico to Accra. From Accra to Sierra Leone. From Sierra Leone to Southeast DC, y'all. We are called in this moment. We are called in this moment to follow the lead of Black women. And I mean all Black women. Because when Fannie Lou Hamer said that none of us are free until all of us are free, she meant it.
So there were some really, really, really great speakers there. I mean, I think
were.
one of the things I wanted to mention really quickly was some of the partners that were affiliated with this event. So Michaela Angela Davis was there, and she was one of the speakers. We had Black Youth Project DC chapter, which is this organization called BYP. And they have chapters all over the country, and it had some dynamic speakers and young speakers, young people.
Yeah.
The Womanist Working Collective, We had Girls for Gender Equity. We had the National Organization for Women, or NOW. We had Sister Song, Spirit House DC, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of partners for the Black Women's March. The march was right there starting in Capitol Hill.
Okay.
It was really great to see not just, first of all, it's great to see lots and lots and lots of Black women, young women, old women, all types of women, light skin, dark skin, natural hair, braids, permed hair, weaves, whatever. We were all there, and we were fly. Like, that's one of the things that, the speakers say. They said, look, we're going to come out here, we're going to march for equality and for what's ours, but we're going to be fly when we do it. Girls, look around. And so, everybody laughed because everybody was like, yeah, we all going to be fly no matter what.
Right, no matter what, right.
And we were. So it was great. There was a lot of talk about the needs of women and girls, and historically how we have been marginalized, or how people have just taken us for granted, like the strong Black woman, as if we don't need all the other things that other women need.
Right.
We need, just like that A9 woman, that famous poem, right? And it's like, just because my back could stand this and I could do that.
Right.
Well, A9 woman too. Like, I need all that same stuff that those other women need and get, right? And so it was just, again, reminding people, though, the importance of action. One of the things that one of the speakers just talked about, and I think that's the most important message in any march, because you're going to talk about gender inequality, and we need to do something about that. Or we're going to talk about working with across cultures on women's issues, and we need to do something about that. Or we're going to talk about our children, this and that. But, there's so many different issues that come up in a march, and you have to ask yourself as you're preparing to leave, and after all of the fanfare is over and all the chants are done and you're charged up and you're ready to go, well, what are you going towards and what are you going to do? And so I think that was the charge that one of the speakers said. If you came to this thing today and you decided that you're going to do one more thing that you were going to do before you came here, then you got what you came for. And I thought that was a powerful message. And for me, what I decided to do is what we talked about earlier on this show. I was like, I have family in the Virgin Islands.
Right.
I'm giving to the Red Cross, but I got people on St. Thomas. Like,
Right.
I could do something right there through folks that are there. So that was the thing that I walked away with saying, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to work with my family who has a business on St. Thomas and see how we can leverage this show to help there.
Absolutely.
The March for Racial Justice was at Lincoln Square, Lincoln Park. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's right there, further up the street, like around Pennsylvania Avenue, around kind of walking school area. So that whole park was filled with folks from all communities, from
diversity,
Black folks, white folks, and the Women's March too. I think I was sharing with this with you earlier, to walk beside people of the majority culture, white people, and you're a brown person, or you're from a community that has been marginalized. Maybe you're potentially, we were talking about marginalization in a bigger context, that's just from race, but not just from gender, but from sexual preference, even from able-bodied, or you have, or your body may be disabled by a physical or mental condition, right? But to have all these different folks walking beside saying, hey, our country is better when it's diverse.
Absolutely.
This is like, that was one of my favorite chants. Like, this is what diversity looks like, or this is what America looks like. It's very empowering when you look around and you see a lot of people that look like you and a lot of people that really don't, right? And you're like, this is what it looks
but
like.
But you're going for the same cause. That is awesome.
So it was really great. I think, I don't know what the numbers were. It seemed like a lot of people to me.
Yeah.
And it was just a really good experience. I was happy to be there. I was happy to just see a lot of solidarity, and it was really, we need to allow ourselves to be engaged. I hadn't personally. I think I was at the Women's March earlier last year. The pink hats march, right?
That was the January 21st,
right?
Resistance March,
and I hadn't been to a march since then. And we need, and we get a lot of energy, and inspiration, and being reminded that you're not in this by yourself, and so it was a nice. I think it's something that you have to do periodically, just to keep yourself pumped up and stoked about. Yes, this is exactly what we need to be doing. So
my kids at the beginning of the administration were like, "Are we going to another march, Mommy?" Once he did the Muslim ban, we were out there. It's just like, my son was like, "Mommy." But you do. It makes you feel good to be around people who and especially the marches that I think that we're talking about. It's for equality. We're not marching for, I don't know, peanuts. We're marching to say, hey, we're the same and we want to be treated the same and we have something to offer and we're here and we don't want to be ignored, I did want to, were you finished talking about the march? Because I did want to mention something that I feel like it's not on our weekly recap, but I did want to mention it because I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't, because you need to be aware that Ray Moore is now the Republican nominee for Senate in Alabama. Now,
Alabama. I say Alabama.
Yeah, and so Trump was backing Luther Strange, who he was running against, but then Steve Bannon went down, and so Trump and all of the Mitch McConnell, all of the big Republicans were backing Luther Strange. They pumped millions of dollars into his campaign, and he was going to win. However, Bannon comes down and backs Ray Moore, who is the biggest racist. He was kicked off the Supreme Court in Alabama twice. He is not for anything that is not white. In fact, in a campaign speech on September 17th, he was talking about the people fighting against each other and how the blacks, the browns, the reds and yellows. Now, I don't know who the hell he's talking about as red and yellow, but this is something that actually came out of his mouth on September 17th, 2017. So what I am saying with this, he believes that the only religion is Christianity, and that Muslims should not be in government. He is a believer that Obama was not born in the United States. That Sandy Hook and 9/11 were acts of God because of our behavior as Americans. This is what he thinks, and God, you can only imagine what he thinks about gays and same-sex marriage and union, because that's also one of the reasons why he was kicked off the Supreme Court. We need to understand that Steve Bannon. Trump was his first step into this underbelly of bringing to the surface this in-your-face hate and racism. And if we allow this mission, their mission of divisiveness and white supremacy to reign, we will. I don't know what's going to happen. So the Ray Moore, the fact that he was able to get this nod by 10 points over somebody who's moderately crazy, but this guy is brandishing a weapon. I mean, during his campaigning, we have to be aware. We need to wake up. We need to see that this administration has woken up the devil, and he needs to be put back to sleep. And we, as the I guess the community of not even like-minded, but people who are compassionate and diverse and aware and appreciate people of other thought and appreciate people of other backgrounds and what makes this country great, need to be aware of the Ray Moores and the Steve Bannons that are creeping up into our government to sully it and to bring divisiveness in and to make brown people more marginalized, women more marginalized, because they think as white men we're going to take something from them. That's the only rationale that I can put my head around why this is happening. So be aware of the Ray Moores that are coming, and we have to stomp them out.
He's headed
to the Senate. I mean, and they want more like him. They want more of this crazy. And the fact that he's there and the Republicans who've been asked are not immediately denouncing him. They're acting. One senator acted, what she said was, "Oh, I wasn't paying attention. Who won?" What in the hell? You are so wrapped up into being Republican that you cannot be human. And that is a problem. So,
I just look at the whole thing is just problematic. He was really supported by the evangelical Christians as well. So I think that that conservative leaning, non-tolerant.
No, for anything that is not white and right. White is right, and that's it. That's what you think.
And not even just that, but also just this lifestyle that is only, aligned with a certain, religious context, which, our America is much founded on religious freedom.
Yeah.
So, and liberties. And so,
not according to him.
I think that, honestly, though, I think part of why Luther Strange lost is because his name is weird. Mm-hmm. Luther Strange. I just can't. I know that sounds
bring
dumb.
levity to it. That's good.
I'm just saying.
No, he lost because there's a lot of people that are racist in Alabama. That's why he lost. Even more racist than he is, because it's not like he is, some screaming, liberal at all.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If Donald Trump supported him, he wasn't great.
No, he isn't.
He wasn't that great.
But the thing is, there are worse.
Jeff Sessions was the person that came before him.
Right.
He's been terrible for our community. He continues to look for reasons to lock black people up. So,
but this person is this Moore. He is terrible because he's looking for, but now he has this support, this engine behind it. He has the Steve Bannon who are now making things that were not norms, not being able to, they want to take us back. We fought this war already. The South lost. Apparently that is not evident. That is coming back to bite us in the ass, and we need to be aware and wake up.
Right. Well, I think that's the message actually behind this whole podcast, is that we need to be talking politics and not just at election time. We need to be following what's happening.
There's a Democrat that we don't even know. I don't even know his name. Unfortunately, we should probably look it up so we can start saying his name over Moore's, just in case we have Alabama listeners that can, galvanize their folks to, not put this white supremacist in the office. Having him come to Washington, with his robe on, his KKK robe, not his judge robe. So that's, do we know who's running?
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones. Come on, Doug Jones, Alabama.
New poll indicates Democrats are going to get their hopes up about winning Alabama Senate election. So Doug Jones.
is
who's running. Now, here we go.
But it's Alabama.
Well, here's the statistics. Alabama hasn't elected a Democrat to the Senate since 1990. If you don't count Richard Shelby, who eventually switched parties,
Right.
they have not elected the state hasn't elected a non-incumbent Democrat since 1978. So it's quite a steep hill in Alabama for
we
Democrats
need to try and start
win.
climbing it. Get
Okay.
your hiking boots on.
Now, I do want to say, interestingly enough, the last Democrat to win Alabama in a presidential election was Jimmy Carter. So, but that, I think I was about 5 then, Jimmy Carter. So it's, there's a long, tough road with Alabama, but we should still fight the fight.
You got to try and fight. I mean, because this is it's big. And even though, people are dismissing it, like we got to try to do something, because if Moore is elected into the Senate, that is the first step in the Bannon plan. Because Trump was the second step in the Bannon plan. I'll say that. I mean, because Bannon is off. This was his jump. Trump was his jumping off point. And now he knows that there is hate that he can rile up.
So December 12th is the election.
It's December 12th. Okay, so it's coming.
Right.
It's happening.
So we'll follow that.
Yeah,
moving
see what
forward.
happens. I don't know what can, but I mean, you have to be hopeful at this point. All right.
Okay, well, I mean, I think, that's a pretty thorough account of the week. I don't know if you have... I kind of shared my act up earlier, which is to try to figure out a way to help the Virgin Islands. Going to work with my family who's there. Shout out to the Strains in the Virgin Islands. So that's kind of where I'm leaning this week. What are you thinking?
What am I going to do this week? I feel like I want to do something where to just, I don't know. I mean, I have all these emotions like that are around this racist president and this racist. So I'm going to be actively not racist this week. And that means, and because people think Black people can't, no, I'm going to actively be considerate of my fellow man, which I feel like I am already, but I'm going to go out of my way to sort of maybe go into the school. I'm the volunteer coordinator at our school. We have a PA meeting tomorrow night. And so my act up will be to sort of galvanize and say at the PA meeting for parents, introduce yourself to somebody who doesn't share your background. Introduce yourself to somebody that you may, as a parent in the school, that you may not ever have wanted to have interacted with, because as a community, we all should respect and get along with each other. And so that'll be my act up, to sort of try and galvanize the people in my community to talk to somebody that doesn't look like them or doesn't speak their language, and to find out where there is a connection there. So that'll be my act.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. There's a lot of conversation too about unintentional racism that happens
all the time,
and what's the responsibility of those of us who deplore racism to uncover our own implicit biases,
right, exactly,
and actively work against them. Yeah. So I think that's a great act up, and one that we tend to not think of
about, right,
as the community that often feels victimized by racism. So I think that's really great. All right. Well, with those wonderful action items, I think that's a wrap for this week. So I just want to say
see you next
farewell
week.
On behalf of Black Women Talk Politics. I'm Sheila Clark.
I'm Sabrina Williams.
And we will catch you next time.